So let's jump in. So this topic is about the nonprofit answer to digital during a pandemic. And really it's during any type of crisis. And my call for nonprofits today is for each of us in our own ways to be bold. And of course, we'll talk about what that means and what that might look like. But I also want to talk a little bit about some of the things that have been happening over the last several weeks as we all have adjusted to this new reality that we find ourselves in. And I hope that you have been looking at some of the data around your organization's digital metrics, from web to social, email. I hope that you've had a chance to talk to your colleagues, your board members, your volunteers, your donors, your other constituents about their needs and about how they want you to respond and want you to be there for them during this time. All that said, I have some of my own ideas, and a lot of this has frankly taken me a little bit of time to come to, because the last month has been really, really rough, especially being based here in New York City and increasingly waking up each morning to find out that more and more friends are sick, unable to get tested. Those that are able to get tested are often testing positive for COVID-19. And now, of course, even seeing folks dying. So if you're like me, hang in there. It's been rough, and we're going to each get to what we need to get to in our own time. So with that said, let's talk about some things that we're actually noticing here. Before we get started, my name is Tuttle. I am a digital engagement strategist. I've been working in nonprofits for over 20 years now, about 22, 23, since I was a teenager. And I've had many roles, originally as a community organizer, a tech evangelist who became a communications professional, focusing on digital initiatives and digital strategies to engage our constituents, to raise awareness, to raise money. And I'm happy to be working with my new agency, Tuttle, which was founded about 8 months ago. And for some of you who received some of my invites to this and some other sessions, you may have seen part of my story in this, in that over the last 8 months, for about the last 3 or 4 months, we've been planning on building out a new online learning center for nonprofit professionals, communications folks, development folks, programmatic folks, all learning how to use and sharing ideas on how to use digital better to raise awareness, engage our constituents, and drive meaningful action. And we were supposed to launch a few weeks ago, right before the Nonprofit Technology Conference. We were going to be sponsoring the Nonprofit Technology Conference at the Nonprofit Technology Conference, at AFP Icon, both of those conferences being in Baltimore back to back. And we were going to be talking about this new learning center. And when everything started changing drastically over the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, we also had to pivot and shift, just like all of you. And that's really where this talk and now our new launch came from, was figuring out how do we, as a resource and a service to nonprofit professionals, change what we're doing to be a better resource and a better service to nonprofit professionals. And I think many of you in nonprofits around the country right now are having to answer this same question, is how do our organizations shift and change given the current reality to continue serving and meeting the needs of our constituents and our missions? So if you're not already, please do follow me online on social media. I'm at Tuttle. The company is at Tuttle Co. We're all over the web on most major social networks and trying to share ongoing resources and support during these times and beyond. Quick mention, this isn't the only webinar. This is actually one of 4 webinars we're hosting this week. These webinars were actually created over the last couple of weeks as a last-minute effort to provide more support and more resources. There's a lot of webinars out there, and I know that. So I don't ask you to go to every webinar. If you've been to several working from home webinars already, you don't need to come to another. But if you want to hear directly from 2 folks who run companies that have had remote staff for a number of years, Seth and I on Friday will be talking about the new digital frontier, working from home, and how we can support our colleagues and each other and keep work going during these times. Backing up from that on Thursday at 3 p.m., I'll be talking with Kishana Palmer about building lasting working relationships, particularly when remote, and how to build trust in our organizations. One of, unfortunately, the first things to go when we can't see each other working day to day. And then, of course, Thursday at 1 p.m., I'll be online with Farrah Trumpeter from Big Duck talking about social fundraising in a crisis, do's and don'ts. Both of us sharing some ideas and experiences that we've had fundraising through different crises over time, as well as what we're already seeing working with different nonprofits right now around the country. So you can sign up for all of those webinars at tuttle.co/events. I'll email out this again, of course, after the session, along with a copy of these slides and a recording of this webinar. So what we're going to talk about today is how the world is changing. We're going to talk about some of the data that we already see coming out, a lot of this reported in the media, a few studies that have actually been done about advertising from different brands and what constituents want from brands during a time like this. I'll also share with you some data that I found through different websites and clients that I have access to, and share what we're seeing and what you might need to look out for on your own websites. I want to talk a little bit about what being bold means. And I want to talk about how I think about nonprofits getting through and not just surviving this time that we're in, but hopefully getting through and thriving throughout this time and as we move to a new normal again, whatever that new normal will be next. And finally, we'll talk about some digital updates that are needed now. Some things that I hope you have actually already done in the last couple of weeks, but that you might not have, especially as we're all trying to frantically figure out how to support our teammates, how to keep programs going, and how to basically rethink or redo everything we had already planned. So we'll run through some of those digital updates across web, social, email, and other things that you should think about as we live in this new age. So first and foremost, we know the world is changing. Let's just put this out there. I think right now we have multiple metrics that we've reached that show that we are in unprecedented times. I don't say this to cause panic. It's just a reality. It is what it is. We have the highest unemployment in US history right now. We have the highest percentage of people working who are employed, working from home than ever before. And we have the largest drop in the stock market in US history. In fact, I think it's 8 of the 10 days largest drops have been in the month of March 2020. And it's already changed how we all behave online. So as we go through all of this, you'll see sources cited for things that are not my own content. And I try to provide links directly to either the research or the reports because I want you to have access to that information. So you're going to get these slides, you'll be able to link and go read more about all these sources. And of course, I have more resources for you as well. So one of the things that has already been found and has already been reported on, and I think we can all relate, is that anxiety, worry, concerns are incredibly high right now. Some research has shown that a lot of folks are concerned about personal issues, including their personal health, their personal employment, income, ability to take care of their families. They're also concerned about their countries and the neighborhoods in which they live, around increased political instability, economic instability, the ability for services to even continue, food shortages, and other issues. Everyday life has changed already for a lot of us. We see more people, by large, 75 to 80% here in the US, are reporting that they're staying at home more than they usually do. This is as of March 30th. This was actually all research done over this last month in March. People are, of course, washing their hands more. This is a great thing. And they are applying physical distancing as well, also called social distancing, but I prefer the term physical distancing because we still have to socialize. People are avoiding public spaces. They're going to shops less. None of this is actually totally probably unheard of to you. You're probably experiencing most of these things yourself. But it does mean that we have to rethink how people are going to interact with our content and the things that they're going to do. We also need to think about what people are doing now that they are at home more. And one of the things that we've already seen, this is actually showing that the darker bar is showing the increase or the current usage of online streaming, of gaming, of TV watching, of internet usage via computers, via phones, via tablets, changing year to year from March 15th to 17th. And this was the weekend after a lot of the stay-at-home requests and guidelines started going into place, especially here in New York City and across the country, largely happened around March 14th. This holds true if you actually look at the last several weeks. We're seeing overall that more people, of course, are online more, as we're home more and have less opportunity to do more things or other things. We're also seeing that home internet data usage is soared, 38% in mid-March, and sheltering shows how that data usage is actually changing from concentrated spots, example on the left from San Francisco and San Jose area, and on the right of New York, showing Manhattan largely in red, to the green spots being where most people are accessing internet data today. And that's largely from their homes, unable to commute, of course. We've also seen a drastic change in the way people are using the internet for work. Now, this isn't entirely for work, because a lot of us are also using Zoom for family game nights. Tonight, I think we have the NTC Queer Meetup for the N10 folks. So we are seeing, though, that Zoom usage is increasing drastically, over 300%. Some people are estimating up to 600%. A little hard to tell since Zoom is actually not sharing some of these numbers. Neither is Microsoft, actually. So these metrics actually come from some research done based on some internet providers that can actually see traffic flow. And they saw a huge jump over the way that people are using these services, the amount of use, but also the way in they're using it. And so the yellow line you see across that example on the left with Zoom is actually the data usage, whereas the blue line are the connections. And so you can think of this as a number of people who are online on Zoom at the same time, and also the amount of data, which is going to increase drastically when we have more people on video, all using high def or even regular video connections to see each other in a group conference. But some things have also not changed. So 10% of the US already doesn't have internet. Just in the United States, 10% of the United States population either does not have or does not use the internet at home. That number has been pretty steady for the last couple of years, although it has changed drastically since 2000, when about 50% of people reported not having internet access at home. And access does vary by state. Certain states, particularly Arkansas, which is the worst state in the country, 12% of people in Arkansas do not have internet access at home, and a larger percentage in Arkansas do not use the internet. Another thing that has not changed is that nonprofits haven't prioritized tech. And this is unfortunately something that we've seen for years now. And so some research that's already out there, and that this came out in 2018, showing that only 39% of nonprofit leaders say their organization is successful at omni-channel marketing. So that's multi-channel marketing, using offline and online marketing to communicate with our constituents, to raise money, to drive advocacy. Only 27% have prioritized data management technologies. So that includes CRMs or databases that are going to be accessible via remote staff, the ability to enter data, to access data via remote devices like phones and tablets, and other technical improvements and advancements that can be used to how we're using CRMs and other data management tools to best work with our constituents. This report actually showed that, I think it was like 58, the vast majority of nonprofits report that they use their CRM simply as a database to maintain a list of donors. They're not actively using it to understand their donors or their constituent needs better. They're not actively using their databases to understand or to figure out which communications or messaging works better through folks with different types of message testing or communications testing. And we also show that 35% are prioritizing technology, only 35%, excuse me, are prioritizing technology to improve program delivery. Now, this was as of last year. And obviously things have changed drastically. Many organizations that did not invest in this before are finding themselves struggling to keep up now with how to either maintain or move their programs online. And many of the organizations that were able to adjust more swiftly and more smoothly had made these advancements in the past couple of years. We also know that what hasn't changed is that constituents still want to hear from us. And so one of the things that one of the resources in a lot of my research that I've been doing, one of the resources I found most helpful is this research by IPSOS, which is an agency that does branding and advertising for for-profit brands. And they did some research in China during January, while China was going through similar shelter-in-place and lockdown scenarios that we're experiencing right now in the US in March. And through that survey and that research, they actually found a lot of data about what constituents who are at home during a pandemic expect from advertising online. Now, of course, this does relate to for-profit brands as a research piece. However, I think there's a lot of lessons in there that would easily apply to nonprofits as well, especially given what we know about other comparable for-profit and nonprofit research that exists. So there's also some things that we don't know. We don't know the long-term economic impact of this. We don't know if we're going to see the economy improve quickly or if it's going to drag on for a year or two. We don't know what's going to actually happen next with the continuation of COVID-19 and how that's going to affect our workforce or constituents' ability to be in physical spaces together. We don't know exactly how the shift to 99% remote and online work during a global crisis is going to affect the individual mental health of our constituents and our staff. We don't know how it's going to affect staff productivity and our ability to continue our programs and services yet. We don't know what the end result is going to be for our offline programming once this either is over or moves into a new phase. And just about every other facet of our lives is largely up in the air right now. In fact, I think that's why we have a lot of uncertainty. So some of that uncertainty lies in, or actually a lot of that uncertainty lies in us not knowing what's going to happen next with this pandemic. Without getting too much into the media, anybody who's been following, you'll probably have easily seen that we're expecting here in New York City that within the next week or two, that we will reach what's called the apex of the largest number of infections and deaths before we'll start to see a decline, largely due to the social or physical distancing we've been doing so far. Other parts of the country have a similar timeline. Some parts are probably going to be closer to 2 weeks, possibly even 3 weeks, depending on where they're at. What you see here in the graphic on the right are a few different scenarios that have been outlined. This is from McKinsey and Company, and it's shared, and they have some other interesting data as well. And what you see is 9 different possible scenarios for what we might find ourselves experience in regards to economic impact of COVID-19. So obviously we've already seen the crash happen economically here in the US as people are spending less money, unable to spend money, have lost their jobs, and the stock market has tanked. What happens next, though, is depends a lot on how we as a nation and our individual cities and states respond to this crisis. And so depending on how your city and state is responding, and I think if you're not in New York or California, you'll largely be able to also look at our states as models. We should start in the next couple weeks getting a much more clear understanding of which direction we're heading towards these different models. The top 4 models are the models that McKinsey and Company says are most probable based on medical and economic experts, and based on the current scenario of how different countries around the world are responding to this crisis. And one of the things that I find very helpful in seeing this is that most of these models show us regaining some stability in our economy. Some are going to be quicker than others, some are going to be smoother than others, and some are going to take longer to see. But there is a possibility for a return and an improvement in the economy, both in the US, but of course, around the world as well. There's also some things that we can look at to figure out some answers to what does that all mean for us? What are we going to do with all of this? One, we can look at past giving during economic downturns. So one of the smartest people I know, Steve McLaughlin, works at Blackballed, also author of Data-Driven Nonprofits, gave a really insightful interview in Donor Voice, in which he shared a couple thoughts, and this was about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, as we were just getting into all of this, about what nonprofits should expect, especially as it comes to fundraising. And some of the most important things that I found really helpful was this graph that he shared from Blackballed Target Analytics that actually shows during the previous 2009 financial crisis that we are looking from 2006 quarterly through 2011. So the financial dip happened right there in the middle where we had that start of the recession and then the end of the recession. And what you see in the dark blue line there is the revenue of nonprofits, whereas you see on the light blue line on the bottom was the number of donors. And so while there was a decline in individual donors over the months and even years after the recession, there was actually an immediate dip, but there was an increase in overall fundraising. And this is largely due to the fact that most donors who already had existing relationships with organizations and organizations that had built sustainable relationships with those donors were able to continue those relationships even after an immediate economic impact or downturn occurred. Number two, we can look at our nonprofit data. So our organization hopefully already has set up web analytics and access to other social media analytics. If you're using any of these channels, there's data that we can start to look at today. And there's some things that we can start to figure out, like how are our constituents accessing our website and our social media channels? So we know that Facebook is reporting huge surges in the number of users, active users who are coming on every day to Facebook and Instagram. We know overall the internet usage is up 38% across the US. We know that people's behaviors are also changing as they're largely confined or confined to home or working from home. And so some of the things that I've started looking into across the websites and the social media accounts that we manage is whether or not we're seeing changes in behavior. Are less people coming to our website? Are they accessing different information? And is the way that they're accessing information changing? And some of the things we found have varied, frankly, between one nonprofit and another. But I have noticed some consistencies among a couple things. So first and foremost, we have not seen web traffic to the nonprofit sites that we manage drastically decrease. And in fact, we've actually seen some websites traffic increase in the last couple weeks, largely as they responded to their community and providing services and support during this time. So we have from that seen the content people are accessing has changed. We still see that reliable content that people were largely accessing before has largely remained the same. People still have those needs from the resources and services that we had before. But we're also seeing an increase in visits when it relates to important data around the time we're in, around the issue of that organization. And then third is user behavior. And this is the one that I find the most fascinating. So typically we used to see that a Monday through Friday timeline was when most traffic would come to our website. In fact, I would usually see something somewhat similar on social media, although social media would have slightly better performance on weekends. But in the last month, I've noticed on most websites that we manage, not all, and they're not consistent. So I think it largely does depend on audiences and possibly content on the website. But we have noticed a shift in the days of the week that people are visiting. We've actually seen an increase in visits across most of the websites we manage, with people visiting those sites on Mondays and even Sundays, while we've seen a decrease on visits on Thursdays and Fridays. Now, I have a couple theories about this, and if anybody else has already checked this out and on your websites and you've looked this up, let me know in the comments, because I would actually be really curious to hear and learn from you as well. But one of my theories in this is that our 5-day week of Monday through Friday, it appears to has shifted to Sunday through Wednesday, possibly Thursday. And I think that's largely happened for a few different reasons. One, we already know from different research online, from all of us feeling it, that folks are overwhelmed right now with content about what's happening in the world. We're also dealing with a lot of stress, new anxieties of having to work from home. And so the way that people are working is shifting. And so when we're not going into an office on Monday through Friday, then we're gonna not see that same access of content in the same way that a lot of the, at least business workers were doing throughout the week. Some of this could be related to when people use the internet at work or at home, or the type of work they're doing on the internet. So if your organization works with people who work in business, and then you probably would have seen a more 9-to-5 regular visit schedule Monday through Friday. Whereas if you worked with people who were maybe in retail or even pet adoption, you might see higher traffic at different times of the day, on weekends or even evenings. So check out your statistics here and figure out when are people visiting you. So we have noticed a difference in the time of day people are visiting, as well as the days of week. The third thing we can do is listen to medical and economic experts. So the calendar I've outlined below here is not exact. It's not perfect, but I pulled some information based on what we know already. So we know that the federal government is advising social distancing or physical distancing until at least April 30th. Now that is a revised timeline from the original April 15th date. We also know that the CDC recommends that no large events, those are events of 50 people or more, or 10 people or more of communities that are at high risk of infection, that those events should be canceled through at least May 10th. That's about the second week in May as of right now. We also know that entertainment professionals and event professionals are already canceling events through at least June, sometimes even July. I think the Olympics was just announced to be rescheduled through, it was either July or the fall. The Pride in LA, Pride in DC, I think Pride in New York maybe even already have been canceled in June. So even though the government extensions for large events being stopped in June and July, those recommendations don't exist yet. So the government's not yet recommending we cancel events in June and July. Even though that's not happening, we're already seeing major entertainment groups and other major events cancel and postpone their events until the fall or even 2021. Now, a lot of this is because of the contracts that's required in signing these things, the loss in money and revenue, if we can't get people to attend those events because these guidelines are extended as we get closer. But a lot of this is also because of the inherent fear that folks are now going to associate with large events once this is all over. And so we have to think about, even if come April 30th or May 10th, if the government's guidelines do shift based on the next couple weeks and maybe we're seeing improvements, even if we're allowed to have events again, we as nonprofits will have needed months to have planned those events. We'll need weeks to organize people to come to those events. And we aren't sure yet if people will want to go out to these events. I think in one way, we're gonna have a bunch of folks who are eager to get outside of their house. We're also gonna have a bunch of folks who are also concerned about whether or not we're returning too quickly, about whether or not it's still safe. And we'll have to see how that plays out as we get closer, which is why I really believe that, truthfully, from June 1st through the end of 2020, we as a nation are uncertain where we will be. And we as nonprofits need to plan with that in mind. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be planning. That doesn't mean that we need to wait and see what happens. It means we need to plan with an idea in mind that events either could be further delayed or that we'll have to deal with other realities in our world at that time. So for example, some of the scenarios that are being discussed over the summer is, should the infection rates decline? Should the death rate decline? Should physical distancing be able to be loosened a little bit? That there might be restrictions still on large scale events of 10 or 15 or 50 or more, but we might be able to return back to offices. We might be able to have small group or support group activities. People might be able to return and at least go back to an organization to volunteer, to get services, or to get help. So what does all this mean? And what do we do with all this information? So with more people physical distancing and working from remote, we have to consider the context through which our constituents are now engaging in our organizations. While we don't know exactly what's going to happen next, what we do know is that there are children out there and animals that still need forever homes. We know that there are parents of LGBTQ youth who still need support, who still need resources, and who still want to be advocates for their children and for other LGBTQ people in gaining equal and full rights. We still know that there are people living with Parkinson's disease who still need exercise and support groups. And we still know that there are survivors of rape and incest who are going to need support throughout these times. And we still know that transgender people still deserve to be seen, valued, and respected. And in fact, this campaign, I thought, was a really great example for today, in that today is Trans Day of Visibility. And this is something that a lot of us are going to start experiencing in the next few weeks, few months. You might already be experiencing it yourself. Is that your ongoing programs, your campaigns around awareness ideas or around engagement campaigns online, maybe even your fundraisers, are still happening. It is still, I think it's Sexual Survivors Assault Month in April. It is actually still Parkinson's Awareness Month in April. And it will still be Pride in June. So these things aren't going to change. So this is not the time for us to do the exact same things we've always been doing, nor is it the time for us to reinvent everything we're doing. In fact, one of the things I've been a little bit concerned with as a techie, as somebody who loves technology, I've been a bit concerned with the number of businesses that I've seen launching their products with extended free months. In that everybody from every appointment calendaring service to every collaboration tool to every social media app is trying to give you free 30 days, a free 3 months, a free 6 months, unlimited of some services and not others. And in large part, this is great. This sounds wonderful. We need these resources. However, if we're right now as organizations trying to learn new tools and adopt new technologies when we haven't yet supported our staff members in this new process of working from home, or we haven't yet put in plans on how we're going to adapt supporting our constituents, if we haven't planned out and thought through the steps we're taking right now, all these new tools we start adopting are actually just going to cause greater headaches in 3 months or 30 days or 6 months when they expire, when staff aren't using them because they weren't trained or don't know how to, when they aren't working and connecting with our other tools because they weren't set up properly or planned for. So it is the time, though, to be bold. And I'd actually like to turn to you in the chat room for 1 second and ask you, what does being bold mean to you? You heard the session title, obviously, when you signed up and registered to attend. But what does being bold as a nonprofit mean to you? Let me know in the chat room real quick. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, don't be shy, folks. Don't be shy. Michael says, not backing down. Love that. I love that. I think about the advocacy campaigns that are happening around the country. There are states that are still trying to reverse trans legislation that had previously been enacted supporting trans people with equal rights, and or even trying to advocate for new discriminatory legislation. Still happening right now while the world goes through everything else. So we can't back down. Jeffrey shares, we got to be in front. I would love to know what you mean by that. So if you don't mind sharing more, definitely do. But when I read that, I had this moment of, yes, we need to be in front of our issue. We need to be in front of our community. We need to be showing up. We can't be disappearing. We can't be hiding. We can't be waiting for this to pass over. And we need to be on the front lines. Jeffrey also means by not being upfront, or excuse me, being in front means also not getting lost among other causes. So that's an interesting one, and it's one that I think we're all going to struggle with during this time. We've always struggled with it anyway, right? But yes, how do we not get lost amongst not only other causes or other organizations that are doing our same work, but amongst all the organizations now that are facing an increased need and likely going to be increasing communications and marketing and other campaigns trying to engage people. And now, all online. We used to be able to have our separate galas and our separate offline events, and now we're going to see all that move online. And so we're definitely going to see, I think, a shift in behavior of how people want to engage with that content and whether they will. Sandra shares, thinking boldly about about mergers that can expand and enhance our services. Sandra, I love that. That is bold. And actually, that was one of the things I was going to talk about today. So let's just call it out what it is. Business leaders right now, I think in New York City, they were predicting that depending exactly on what happens to the economy and how quickly businesses can reopen, that we're likely to see like up to 1/3 of small businesses fail this year or have to close their doors. And I haven't seen the stat yet on nonprofits. If you have, please share it with me. But we can't kid ourselves. Some nonprofits are probably not going to make it through this. Some nonprofits that are already struggling are probably going to see further struggles. And so I think, Sandra, this is a really bold idea that we need to rethink how we work and who we work with. And so some organizations, it might be an opportune time to think about a merger of supporting and combining services to continue meeting the needs of our communities and continuing serving the missions that our organizations share. I know I've skipped through some, so I'm just reading around. Samuel, back up at the top of the comment, says, not always waiting for permission. Oh, that is a good one. Samuel, I saw a star there. Did you write it twice? Looks like it. I don't know if you expanded upon that. Not waiting for permission, that says so many things to me. We're really good at organizations at either, I find, planning everything out, being very thoughtful and process oriented, or just doing things on the fly. See kind of two types of organizations often dealing with how they do their work, right? And I think what we need to do is we do have to find a middle ground here. We have to revisit our plans, and I'll talk more about this in a second. But we also need to be a little bit more relaxed and allow ourselves the freedom to adjust week by week, possibly even day by day, as we figure out what works and what doesn't work anymore. Things aren't the same. The same way that you used to, your messaging that you used to use, the time of the day that you used to send your emails, the day of the week you sent your emails, the needs of your constituents, all of these could have changed. And so we have to kind of live in the moment and think through and be willing to adjust to deal with this moment that we're in. And you can plan for that. You can plan for that. Dan shares providing unexpected value. I love that. I think that was one of the biggest questions I asked myself as we were trying to grow my agency, but also trying to launch this new online learning center, was how do I change what I'm doing to focus on my goal, my purpose, which is to provide value? And what do I have of value that I can share with others? And I think all of our nonprofits can definitely be thinking about that too. Clarissa shares continuing to adapt and respond to people's needs. Yes. Lisa, willing to take risks, not play it safe. Yes, absolutely. Risks are going to be big during this time. And actually, there is a Joe Moran. I don't know who knows Joe Moran, currently with Michael J. Fox Foundation. He taught me a really great motto, which is that risks are really opportunities in disguise. Risk is just an opportunity in disguise. So yes, everything we do right now is a bit risky. It's also an opportunity to show up, to do something different than we've done before that might actually do better than what we've done before. It's an opportunity to actually find the ways we can serve our community that we may not have even known about. These are also great. I know y'all can read each other's stuff, so definitely want y'all to continue looking through that. Mary, thank you so much for sharing that about how you're working to support people who are struggling with cancer trauma. So you're supporting them while calling to our healthy population to support their work, because self-isolation has been a reality for the community long before this. I appreciate that. Okay, so how can nonprofits be bold in the face of uncertainty? That is not spelled correctly. I'm so sorry. We'll correct that in the slides before we get that out to you. Uncertainty is the actual word. First and foremost, let's listen to our staff needs. I saw a really great email communication, maybe y'all saw it too, from Amy Sample Ward, the CEO of Intin, sent out to all of the members. I think she has a webinar later this week about this topic that she titled it, "Technology Will Not Save Us." And as a technologist, I kind of agree. Technology is a part of this, absolutely. We know it is, it has to be. But people come first. It's really about our people. It's about the people we work with, it's about the people we serve, it's about the people who live in our communities. And so right now, first and foremost, if we're not already, we need to redo how we work together. We need to rethink how a lot of our organizations are working. I'm not going to be the first one who says this, so I don't think this is going to be a surprise, but a lot of our organizations are not really great to our staff. A lot of our organizations are not as equitable as they should be. And a lot of our organizations are not as supportive of one another as we could be. And so I think this is a time for us to rethink what it means to work with one another and to support one another and listen to staff. Our staff have needs and they have experiences that are going to be different than our own. And so this, of course, includes listen to the technological needs that they have of access to a computer at home if they don't already have a personal computer that they can use, access to internet service if they don't have internet service at home. But it also means rethinking what we demand of staff in terms of work hours, productivity, and providing new supports for staff that may not exist already. So depending on your HR policies and services, you might already have access to different mental health services or medical services that staff can tap into remotely. If you don't, this might be a time that we have to adjust that and make some changes so that our staff can be supported. We also have to reimagine the typical responses to economic downturns. And so what I mean by this is that when big things happen like this, our typical response as organizations is to get scared, to either under-communicate or to over-communicate. And often in times of true uncertainty, it's to be quiet. It's to back up and to withdraw within. We end up spending a lot of time in internal meetings with our peers, with our board members, maybe talking through what we're going to do, how we're going to adjust, what we're going to change. And I know several organizations that are dealing with this right now, of just spending weeks now, just talking through how to change and how to update and how to really pivot. So we need to reimagine our typical responses to economic downturns and do things that we haven't done before. So a lot of organizations in an economic downturn, when they start to get scared that the finances are going to dry up or they're going to have to tap into the reserves, they lay off staff. Can we rethink that? Is there an adjustment that could be made of those getting higher salaries, of even the executive director, of potentially if your organization has bonuses or other pay opportunities, are there ways that we can adjust that to ensure that folks can keep their jobs? We need to call on each other and particularly our board members for support. And so this is one I hope we have all done already. We have all already had an emergency board meeting in the last month talking about what's happening in the world and how that's going to affect us. If you have not done this yet, you need to do it. It's time to do it. And even if you have already done this, I would go back to your board again. This is not the time that we should be talking to our board and giving them a quarterly update and then saying, we'll check back in with you in July and let you know what's changed. This is the time where we need to call upon our board members and really all of our greatest supporters and say that we need you. We need your help to get through this and we need you to be all in. We also need to communicate with our donors and other constituents meaningfully. We need to provide support, programmatic updates, and an opportunity to affirm their support for our mission, for our issue, and our shared values. As I said, a lot of organizations will often in times of crisis over-communicate or under-communicate. A lot of us aren't sure right now what we should be saying. If you're anything like me, you've probably received messages from every single brand you've ever interacted with who ever had your email, including that shoe company that you bought a pair of shoes from 5 years ago and you've never heard from them again. And suddenly their CEO is emailing you to tell you how much they care about you and COVID-19. A lot of those emails are spam. They're junk. They mean well, of course, but I don't care what that shoe company that I talked to for bought shoes from 5 years ago, am not on their email list and have no idea, frankly, who they are. I had to look up who they even were. I don't care about their response to COVID-19. It doesn't impact me directly. And likewise, I don't think that we as nonprofits should be emailing every single constituent in our organization and emailing everybody we know, telling them what we're doing about COVID-19. I think what we should be doing is following up with our greatest supporters, our existing donors, our existing volunteers, and others who've been there with us throughout your organization's work, and make sure that they know how you're responding. ask them what they need from you and involve them where possible in opportunities to respond to this. Now, this is gonna, of course, look different for every organization. Some organizations that are directly impacted by COVID-19 or even maybe working on an issue that's related to this are gonna probably be a bit more direct with messaging around what's happening right now and being involved in COVID-19 related communications. Largely, for most of us, we're probably updating our constituents on how we're being impacted by the environment, by the world that we live in today because of COVID-19, but we're not actively working on COVID-19. And I think there's some really great messaging resources that have been put out there by Big Duck and RAD campaigns, and even N10, that share ideas about what messaging is effective and useful during this time. And so I'll link to some of those resources at the end of this session, because it's not a matter of whether or not we should be talking to our constituents. We should. It's just a matter of how we're going to do it in a way that's respectful and accurate and helpful, that provides value, like Dan said in the comments. Mary, I just saw your comment. Uncertainty is the mood right now. Yeah, I like that. We can definitely make up a new word. So number 5, let's engage our volunteers in being a solution. All of our organizations, or at least most every organization I've ever worked with, has opportunities for volunteering. I'll say that some of them have done better than others, and some of our organizations have really great volunteer opportunities, often in-person volunteer opportunities that may no longer be available or may have shifted in how they're done. But I think through most of the organizations I've worked with or worked for or worked at, and we always had a list of things that we wanted to get done or needed to be done, and often would struggle to find folks who could help with them, especially when it came to communications needs, technology needs, and possibly even marketing and campaign work. And so I think this is a time for us to tap possible volunteers, and those could be people on advisory boards or working boards who support the organization via committees or whatnot. Those could be people who sign up for volunteer opportunities through your website. And so this could be something that we can talk through with our staff to figure out what those opportunities are that exist. Maybe we are experiencing some financial issues right now, and so we need some volunteers who are willing to do some graphic design work for us. Or maybe we are struggling to figure out a new campaign or how we're going to actually create this campaign, so we can ask for a volunteer to create a video or do some editing. Or we can engage volunteers directly in our campaigns, asking them to help launch campaigns, share stories, be ambassadors for the issue in the organization. And of course, we can continue making the donor the hero, not the hero of COVID-19. The hero of your nonprofit, the hero of your issue, the hero for the work that you're doing. And so we can make the donor the hero by providing them opportunities to be supportive. And that doesn't, of course, mean always donating. It could be other opportunities if they're unable to continue the financial support, like volunteering or giving feedback. And then finally, we can reevaluate our plans, adjust, and go forth. So one of the things that a lot of organizations are dealing with right now is that we either really well documented or just talked about in conversation, we all had plans. We had things we were going to do this month, that we were going to be posting and talking about next month, that we were going to be launching in a few weeks or inviting people to attend. And all that has possibly changed. At the very least, we have to rethink the context in which we're continuing those plans and the context in which our constituents are going to be seeing those campaigns or accessing those communications. And so this is the time to pull those plans out and to ask ourselves some questions. Are our goals still realistic? Are the audiences we're communicating with the same? And do either of those things need to change? What are we seeing on our different communications platforms and the way that our constituents are engaging with us? And do we think there may be some impact by the way that users' behavior is changing on our digital platforms? Will that somehow impact the campaigns and plans that we have in place? So with that, as we wrap up today's webinar, I want to leave you with some digital updates that are needed now. Because while figuring out how to pivot as an organization is going to require a lot of conversation with our team and a lot of rethinking the plans that we had in place. There's already some things that we should all be doing today to make sure that our website, email, social media, and other channels are going to be best accessible to constituents throughout this process. So number one, if you haven't already, update your phone greeting. So your phone greetings that are on your business line, maybe a phone tree that you have set up, is probably not been updated in a while. At minimum, I would suggest that we revisit what it sounds like when somebody calls in and think through two things. One, what's the greeting that they're getting? And is it relevant for the time that we're in? Are we saying something like, "Hi, thanks for calling. We hope you're having the best day ever"? Or are we referencing events coming up, maybe in a pre-recorded, like, "Don't forget our gala at the end of the month," kind of message that now needs to be adjusted or changed? And step two is the phone tree or the options for constituents to leave a message or reach somebody. With all of us working from home now, what processes have we put in place to ensure that our constituents who are calling for help now because they can't come into the door anymore, so now they're calling for direct help or resources or a quick answer, how are we ensuring that their calls are being answered? And sure, we could have voicemail set up and check it once a day and give calls back the next day. However, I'd suggest in times like these, when people are home and people are available, that if your constituents are calling you, that they would appreciate an immediate response. So I would suggest either putting a new phone line in, maybe a VoIP, voice over IP, so it can be accessed via the computer or somebody's mobile phone via an app. And that can be a VoIP phone number that is redirected to from your main line. Or it can be a number that your voicemail greeting or a phone tree refers people to if they have something that requires an immediate response. Your phone greeting can also direct people to visit your website to find out what's happening around how your programs, events, offices have all changed given the current environment that we're in. And this can actually be a really easy way with a phone greeting to let people know where they can find the information they want when you can't answer the phone in person. Two is update your social media channels. And so review your primary social media accounts and just adjust your hours and business information if any of that is provided. So this is largely done on Facebook, possibly on your LinkedIn page. And it's where you're actually providing your services, your hours, and sometimes your contact information. So a lot of us on our Facebook pages might have that primary page button say, "Call us." Well, if nobody's in your office right now to receive calls, maybe that should be switched to email us or message us through the social media channel. In your business hours, if your hours have adjusted, or if your in-office hours are not available anymore. So in other words, if you were in an organization where folks could expect for your business hours for your doors to be open for them to show up, then that information should be shared online, either with a quick update in your bio, in your business bio, or via another update on your webpage. The one other thing we have to do here is go look at our scheduled social media. I know we all schedule social media, and I would be a little bit careful about scheduling during this time because things are changing really quickly. And so I saw an invite to a webinar last week that used a picture, and it looked like it had been scheduled before a lot of this had happened, especially given the messaging of how it was talking and in no way made reference to the world we live in. But it used a picture of a bunch of people holding hands. And of course, the second I saw this, my mind goes to, okay, physical distancing. And I cannot tell you today what that webinar was about. Totally missed it. All I could do was focus on the photo and the time that we're in right now. And so it doesn't mean that everyone's going to have that reaction, of course, but if we can limit distractions to the communications we're sending by sending images that are thoughtful considering the time we're in, we're probably going to have a better chance of getting the user to engage in that communication versus being distracted by those things. So then email. Email, the big thing we need to do is just email people. We need to email our constituents, and we need to email them with purpose. So we don't need to increase emails for the sake of it. We don't need to just email everybody in our database because we have an email address. Every brand right now is sending supports and updates to their constituents. So there's also a lot of noise right now. But if we can be thoughtful about the information we're sharing, and how we can be helpful, how we can provide value to our constituents, then that email is worthy. I would suggest that we relook at our email schedules and especially rethink our financial appeals and how we're doing those. And I think that this is actually a time where some of us can be bold by adjusting our email fundraising to phone fundraising. And that it's time that we think through other ways of engaging our constituents beyond just emailing and posting on social media, or even just doing offline communications. I think it's probably more important than ever that we rethink how we communicate by phone with our most important constituents. And review your website usage metrics. So there's a couple things with our website we can do, but the first thing you can do is review your website usage metrics. And that this is going to be really helpful both for your website updates and content, but also your email and social media. So I provided 2 links here, and you'll get these slides, so you'll be able to link to these. And these are going to be custom reports in Google Analytics. One report is the time of day report, which will show you on your website how folks are accessing your website in the time of day. And the other one is the day of week. So what days of the week are they attending? Are they visiting? Now you can change the date variables and look at these reports from March 14th to today versus the month prior, the weeks prior, the month prior, the year prior, or really any dates you want to compare through. And I would compare through a few different things because of course the way that this is affecting all of us is different depending on where we are in the country and how our cities are responding. So user behavior could also shift, and that's especially true depending on whether or not you're a local or a national organization. But if you look at these and compare past usage to current usage, take note if your users are changing their behavior. I mean, as I said, we saw drastic differences in how people were accessing our websites. I think it was a 35% decline in web visits on Fridays and Saturdays, and between a 15 and 38% increase in web visits on Sundays and Mondays. So go understand what your constituents are doing and think through how that's going to impact when they read emails, when they're on social media, and when they're going to be looking up resources from your organization for what they need. Also visit your top visited pages in Google Analytics. See whether or not the top visited pages of the past few months remains true today. Are people accessing different types of content for any reason? And if so, do we need to go look at those web pages and ensure that they're up to date and provide accurate information for the time that we're in? And then number 3 here is to create custom alerts. So custom alerts are in Google Analytics, and there's a couple ways that you can do them. But basically you're saying to Google, when something happens on our website, send me an email notification. So I'll often create custom alerts when to notify me if there's a sudden increase by like 20% or more in web traffic to our website, because that could mean that something happened. Either a news agency is referring to our website, somebody posted something on social media that got a lot of attention, maybe somebody, an influencer or somebody mentioned us. It could also point out when specific resources are being accessed more often than they used to be. And update your website. So in addition to just making sure that your website is up to date with regards to events and programming and how people can access that, also consider whether or not you should maybe have a COVID-19 landing page. This is not something that every organization should be doing, but if your constituents would expect for you to have some type of update on how either your work is progressing, your programs have shifted, or the way that they can support you has changed, then let's let folks know by providing a landing page, a centralized place on our website where they can access that information and where we can update with things as they continue to change. And then finally is update your Google business listing. So your Google business listing is what happens when you Google your organization's name and you see them on Google Maps. Or if you do it in Google search, you'll often see this on the right-hand sidebar to the right of the different listings in the Google search results. Your business listings might already have your hours listed, depending on whether or not you set them previously. And whether or not they do, right now is the time where we should be updating that and making sure that the hours are accurate and that we provided any specific information on how people can access programs, services, or even that landing page where they can find updates from us on how we're responding to COVID-19. I created a quick checklist here that'll help you think through some of the things that you can do across phone, social, email, and web, as well as some other considerations, Like if you're seeing an increase in online messaging coming through social media channels now, instead of email, phone, or in person, then maybe we should invest in a quick chatbot that will respond to constituents in a timely manner with the most commonly accessed resources or an update on how programs and services have been affected. So with that, we are at the end of our time today, but I did link some additional resources. Some of these were cited throughout the presentation, and others are additional supports that I thought could be helpful for you. Don't forget, we have the 3 additional webinars coming up that you can register at tuttle.co/events for. All of them will be recorded, and even if you sign up, you will be able to access those after the fact via recording and download the slides. And finally, Everyday Nonprofits is the new online learning center that Tuttle Co is launching this week. We were going to be a paid membership only program supporting nonprofit staff. However, due to everything that's happening, we also have shifted our priorities to ensure that we're providing value to you. We are creating a free membership option that will be emailing you and inviting you to join. It is completely free. All of the webinars this week and other webinar recordings will be uploaded and available for you to access free of charge, as well as additional resources like digital campaign worksheets, Facebook fundraiser dashboards on how to analyze your Facebook fundraisers to find your biggest supporters. And with the paid membership, that's $29 a month subscription, or $248 a year, which is $100 off the monthly subscription. You get everything in the free membership, of course, plus we're gonna have ongoing classes, hands-on workshops in which we're gonna talk through everything from how to live stream on Facebook, to how to get the right lighting in your home office now for online video chats, to how to create a digital strategy and implement that digital strategy across social, email, and web to get through this process and to keep people engaged, to keep your organization thriving. I'm also gonna have open office hours every other week on this new site, where I'll be available for a couple hours every other Friday to answer your questions online in group chat around anything going on. So consider it free group consulting. We'll be emailing you an invite to this, and I do hope you'll be able to join. And I hope I'll actually be able to be with you and other people in person again, like these lovely folks at a NeighborWorks training. Please stay in contact. Reach out to me via email, on social media, and I'm happy to answer your questions anytime I can. Thanks so much for joining, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Dan, David, Kira, Jeffrey. I appreciate you all. Hang in there.